So the other day I saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, I gotta be honest, I didn't really know what to expect going into this movie. The first time that I had any exposure to it was in the Venom after credits scene, which I talk about in my review of it on this channel. To be honest, it looked pretty cool and pretty fun, and right away I knew I was gonna love this movie, I'm not gonna lie. There are two end credits to this movie. One, I think you could probably skip entirely. The second one, you could probably skip entirely. The second one,
you could probably skip entirely. The second one, you could probably skip entirely.
Alright, so I really didn't think much of this movie going into it, to be honest. This movie's one of the funniest movies I have seen in so long, and it's not like an absurd, in-your-face, over-the-top, outlandish kind of comedy. It's that really precise, well-thought-out, laser-focused humor that gets you laughing out loud and is awesome. There's a lot of character jokes. Character jokes can be a bit risky. A lot of sitcoms rely on character jokes. So they'll have like a stupid character say something stupid, or like a horny character say something horny. The way that you do a good character joke is in such a way that it could only be done by that character or in this specific circumstance. It's not something that you could just recycle. Like I said, a stupid character says something stupid, you could put it into any sitcom. There's also a little bit of reference humor a character does and you go, oh yeah, I do that all the time, that's funny, I do that too. Also a lot of creating a pattern so that you expect something only to break it. Small touch of slapstick. Of course, you know that there's a Spider-Ham in this movie.
My name is Peter Porker.
Misplaced focus. The examples of misplaced focus jokes in this movie are some of the absolute best. It's really clear that the people that wrote the humor for this movie really knew what they were doing. The animation in this movie is so friggin' good. This is one of the most stylized movies I've ever seen. I also saw this movie in 3D, and I think that that helped a lot because there's so much depth to all of this. This movie's kind of like watching a regular movie, a cartoon movie, and a comic book all kind of wrapped and morphed into this weird, really cool style all in one package. So the best comparison that I can make stylistically is it's sort of like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. They both borrow from that other genre and pull it into their movie really a lot and make a really interesting, cool style. Now, there's a lot of different versions of Spider-Man in this movie, but it really boils down to three. That's Miles Morales, Peter Parker, and Spider-Gwen. Those are going to be the three that everybody comes out of this movie loving. I grew up reading Spider-Man comics with Peter Parker. I've never read a Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man comic book. It came after my time, so I never bothered to pick it up. Going with Miles Morales for this movie was absolutely the right decision, and I can't wait to see more of them. The Spider-Man origin is one that everybody keeps saying, we've seen it, we've seen it, we've seen it, we don't need to see it again. And this movie does it again, only it's not Peter Parker's origin, it's Miles Morales'. This is the same origin, only different. It shows you it without you even realizing it. Things are happening, and by the end of the journey, you realize, oh wait, yeah, that's kind of like this, and this person's kind of like that, and they kind of did this, and by the time you're done, there was one thing that I was like, oh, but they didn't get that in there, and then I realized, oh no, they did it, but they did it a little bit different. This movie isn't so much a remake as it is more like a remix, because it's completely different, but all the beats are in the right spot. George Lucas said that his movies need to rhyme with each other, and I would sort of liken it to that. For those of you still holding out for Peter Parker, never fear, because Peter Parker is like the biggest secondary character in this movie. This is the most accurate portrayal of Peter Parker that I've seen outside of comic books. More accurate than any other piece of media. In order to enjoy these other pieces of media, movies, TV shows, I've had to make some concessions that yeah, that's not really the Peter Parker that I read in the comics. I think we all have a really fond spot for the old-time Spider-Man cartoon. Everybody loves that, but I think we'll all agree that it's not exactly accurate to the comic book. I think we also love the 90s cartoon, and that was really cool. The character of Peter Parker, I always felt the best way to describe him is a Saturday morning cartoon protagonist who happens to also have similar things happen to him as Spider-Man. The same could probably be said about the Tobey Maguire version. Yeah, he's the most iconic version of Spider-Man, but he was sort of the typical Hollywood movie protagonist who happens to have Spider-Man's ability. Andrew Garfield was a lot closer in that he could do backflips and kick ass and smart mouth his opponents, but something about him as Peter Parker didn't quite fit. He just didn't go through the same sort of angst and problems that Peter Parker should. The Homecoming version seems really good so far, actually, but the one thing that I do have as a bit of a gripe is they seem to be straying away from things that define Spider-Man in order to get away from previous versions. Let's just get a reminder of how Stan Lee views Peter Parker.
When I originally planned him, I wanted him to have problems. The one thing that my publisher felt no hero should have. You know, he never had enough money, had trouble with girls. The way I would write the stories, he'd be as apt to have an ingrown toenail or dandruff as anything else.
This version is exactly how I had always seen Spider-Man.
You see, I saved the city, fell in love, I saved the city some more, maybe too much, blah, blah, blah. I buried Aunt May, my wife and I split up, but I handled it like a champion.
Spider-Man is a job that Peter Parker hates. Have you ever had a job that you hate? Have you ever had a job that your family tells you should get the heck out of? Have you ever had a job that you go other places and even though people don't know that you work there, they still badmouth the job while you're around? That's what Peter Parker being Spider-Man is like, though. J. Jonah Jameson every day badmouths him. Aunt May hates him being Spider-Man. The media, the police, some of the people that he even saves hate Spider-Man. And the truth is, even Peter Parker kind of hates Spider-Man. The problem is, he has to be Spider-Man. Because those iconic words, with great power comes great responsibility, he feels them in his soul. This movie, and I'm not exaggerating, could be the absolute best Spider-Man movie that's ever been made. And even more than that, it could be the best superhero origin movie that's ever been made. And that's even now in a marketplace that's oversaturated with superhero origin movies. And one that's oversaturated with this superhero origin story. But in this movie, they do it, and they do it better. They do it awesome, and I'm telling you, man, you gotta see this movie. Thanks for watching. Go watch this movie. And I hope you have a good day.